They say life never prepares you for certain moments. And they're right. Because nothing, not age, not experience, not love, can ever prepare you for that moment. That one moment when everything shifts, quietly, almost without warning. I still remember it. His voice, soft, uncertain, just above a whisper. He looked at me, not with arrogance or boldness, but with vulnerability. And he said something no mother, no woman, ever expects to hear. "Can you help me with my first time?" At first, I thought I misheard. But the silence that followed told me I hadn't. In that second, something inside me cracked open. And I wish I could say I pushed it all away. I wish I could say I smiled, gave him a hug, told him to talk to someone else. But I didn't. Because I froze. Because somewhere, deep inside me, a part of me heard him. A part of me understood. And that terrified me more than anything else ever has. It's not a moment I'm proud of. It's not a story I ever thought I'd tell. But it happened. And when it did, everything I thought I knew about myself, about right and wrong, was suddenly blurred. You see, this wasn't just about him. This was about me. About years of feeling invisible, unwanted, unseen. About the kind of loneliness that creeps in slowly and settles into your bones. He didn't just ask for help. He offered something I hadn't felt in years: connection. And that's what makes this story so hard to tell. Because the truth isn't black and white. It never is. If you've ever felt lost inside your own life, if you've ever longed for someone to really see you, to notice you in a way that makes you feel real again, then maybe you'll understand why I didn't walk away when I should have. Maybe you'll understand how I ended up here, telling the story I wish I didn't have to tell. Subscribe to Heartfelt Tales Unfold, because some truths are too haunting to ignore. And what happens next, you won't believe. I guess, to understand how things got this far, you have to understand me. Understand us. I'm 38. Married. On paper, everything looks fine. Maybe even ideal. Nice house. 2 cars. Quiet neighborhood where you hear sprinklers more than you hear arguments. But real life doesn't live on paper, does it? My husband, David, isn't a bad man. He works hard. Provides. Pays the bills. Fixes the leaking faucet when I ask enough times. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me. Stopped noticing the little things. How I curled my hair for dinner. How I wore perfume to bed. How my voice got quieter every time I realized he wasn't listening. We used to talk. Laugh. Now we just exist. Like roommates who occasionally bump into each other in the hallway. He comes home late. Eats alone in front of the TV. Falls asleep on the couch more nights than not. And me? I've become the background noise in my own marriage. Some nights I sit at the kitchen table long after the dishes are done, staring out the window like I'm waiting for something. I don't even know what. Maybe a sign. Maybe permission to admit how empty I've been feeling. And then there's Josh. 19. My stepson. David's only child from his first marriage. His mom left when he was little. No calls. No birthdays. Just disappeared one day and never came back. When I came into their lives, Josh was 12. Shy. Quiet. He used to hide behind his dad when I spoke to him. But over the years, we got close. He started opening up to me. He'd sit on the kitchen counter while I cooked and tell me about his day, his friends, his dreams. He never called me mom. I never asked him to. But the bond we had, it was real. Sometimes stronger than anything I had with his father. I was the one who helped him with his first heartbreak. The one who stayed up late with him before exams, quizzing him until his eyes drooped. The one who held him when he cried, silently, because he hated showing tears. And somewhere along the way, he stopped being just my stepson. Not in a romantic way, not then. But emotionally, he became the one person in the house who saw me. He noticed when I wore a new dress. He asked if I was okay when I sighed too loud. He listened, really listened, when I talked. That kind of attention, when you've been starved for it, it starts to feel like oxygen. Our house, despite all the warmth it should have had, always felt cold. Not physically, God knows we had central heating, but emotionally. Everything was in place, but nothing felt in place. We were like actors in a play we'd all forgotten the lines to. Josh and I became the only real connection in that house. We'd laugh together, share little inside jokes, even watch old romantic movies late at night when David was working late again, or just not interested. I'd pour us tea, and we'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, quoting lines from the movie like we were in on some secret the rest of the world didn't know. But there were moments. Brief, fleeting moments where something shifted. He'd look at me a little too long. Or I'd feel a flutter I didn't want to acknowledge. It was subtle. Too subtle to call out, but real enough that I noticed. And then came that night. We'd just finished watching a film, I don't even remember which one. Something romantic and bittersweet, the kind that makes you ache a little when it ends. I stood up to clear our mugs, and as I turned to say goodnight, Josh paused. He looked at me, not the way a stepson looks at a stepmother. There was something softer in his gaze, deeper. He opened his mouth like he was about to say something, then stopped. His eyes held mine for just a second too long. And then he whispered, "Good night," and turned away. But I stood there, frozen. Because in that pause, in that tiny hesitation, something unspoken passed between us. I felt it. And I know, he did too. It wasn't just a glance. It was a crack in the wall we'd both been pretending didn't exist. And once something cracks, it never quite fits the same way again. It was a Wednesday night. Quiet, like most nights in our house. David had already gone to bed, early as usual, claiming he had a long day ahead. I stayed up, just like I always did, sipping lukewarm tea and letting the silence settle around me like a heavy blanket. I didn't hear Josh come downstairs at first. But then I noticed the soft creak of the stairs, the cautious rhythm of footsteps trying not to wake anyone. He walked into the kitchen, barefoot, wearing one of those oversized hoodies that made him look younger than he was. There was something in his face, not sadness, not exactly. More like hesitation, like something was sitting on his chest and he didn't know how to say it out loud. "Can we talk?" he asked. Just that. Simple words. But something in his tone made me put my mug down. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice even. We sat at the kitchen table. The same one where I'd packed his school lunches, helped him with homework, listened to stories about teachers and friends and heartbreaks. But tonight, the air between us was different. He was quiet at first, fidgeted with the string of his hoodie, looked at his hands a lot. Then, finally, he spoke. "I think I'm ready," he said. I looked at him, unsure what he meant. Ready for... He didn't look up when he said it. To be with someone. You know, my first time. There was this moment where everything in me tensed. Not because I was shocked, not entirely. He was 19. It made sense. But because of how he said it. Who he was saying it to. I took a breath, trying to shake off the sudden tightness in my chest. I nodded slowly, offering the safest response I could find. "Well, that's a big step. Are you nervous?" He let out a small laugh. Not a happy one. One of those soft, embarrassed sounds you make when you're trying to hide how scared you are. "I don't want to mess it up. I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm scared of being laughed at. Or disappointing someone." My heart squeezed a little at that. Not because of what he said, but because I could feel how much it mattered to him. That need to feel worthy. Wanted. Capable. I smiled gently, trying to ease the tension. "Everyone feels that way the first time," I said. "It's normal. You don't have to rush it. The right person will understand." He looked at me then. Really looked. "That's the thing," he said. "I don't trust just anyone to understand. I trust you." I didn't know what to say. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Because his eyes weren't just pleading for advice. They were searching mine for something more. "You've always understood me," he said, quieter now. "More than anyone ever has. You've always been there. Always made me feel safe." I laughed nervously, trying to brush it off. "Well, I've had a lot of practice taking care of you." But my voice didn't land right. Even I could hear it. How thin it sounded. How uncertain. There was a long pause. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. Like we both knew something had shifted, but neither of us wanted to name it. Then, without thinking, I reached out. Placed my hand on his shoulder. A simple gesture. one I'd done 100 times before. But this time, I didn't pull away. His skin was warm. His eyes dropped to where my hand rested on him, then lifted back to mine. Something passed between us. Unspoken, uninvited, but undeniable. I let my hand linger a second too long. Just one heartbeat more than I should have. And that second, that heartbeat was enough. Enough to let the thought form. Enough to plant the seed. I took my hand back quickly, clearing my throat. "Well," I said, forcing a smile, "you'll figure it out. You're thoughtful. You care. That's more than most people have going for them." He didn't argue. Just nodded, still watching me. Still, waiting maybe. Eventually, he stood. Said goodnight. Walked back up the stairs. And I sat there, frozen. The silence around me louder than it had been all night. Because in that brief conversation, everything changed. It wasn't about advice. It wasn't even about sex. It was about something deeper. A longing, a trust, a hunger for connection, for closeness, that we both recognized. And once that hunger surfaces, once you look someone in the eye and realize they see you, really see you, it's almost impossible to unfeel it. I wish I could say that was the end of it, that I brushed it off and moved on. But the truth is, that was just the beginning. After that night, something changed inside me. I tried to pretend it hadn't. I tried to wake up the next morning like everything was the same. Like his words hadn't echoed in my mind all night. "I trust you. You're the only one who's ever really understood me." But I couldn't stop hearing them. Over and over. Like a quiet drumbeat under every moment of my day. What was he really asking? Was it just guidance, reassurance? Or was there something deeper beneath his voice, beneath his eyes, beneath the way he lingered that night? I told myself not to read into it. That I was just lonely. That my own emotional hunger was making me imagine things that weren't there. But then, why did my chest tighten every time I heard his footsteps on the stairs? Why did I start listening more closely to the sound of his laughter, watching for the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't paying attention? I didn't want to feel anything. God knows, I didn't plan to. But it's like my body remembered something my heart had forgotten, what it feels like to be seen, to be wanted, even if it's only imagined. And that terrified me. I started seeing memories differently. Moments with David, my husband, that I used to excuse, now they came back sharper, colder. I'd crawl into bed some nights, wearing lingerie I hadn't put on in months. He wouldn't even look up from his phone. No kiss. No touch. Just silence and scrolling and sleep. Other nights, I'd reach for him. And he'd shift away, mumbling something about being tired. Every rejection was like a pinprick to the heart. Small, but constant. And together, they made me numb. How do you stay whole in a relationship that slowly chips away at who you are? I started remembering the last time he touched me with intention, not out of habit, not just routine, but with that hunger I used to crave. I couldn't even remember when that was. But Josh looked at me like I still mattered. Like I still had softness. Like I still glowed. I kept trying to draw a line in my mind. To tell myself, he's just a boy, he needs guidance. You're supposed to protect him, not confuse him. But then came the counter voice. The quiet whisper that lives in the corners of your soul when you're aching for something. He's not a child anymore. He's 19. A man, technically. You've watched him grow. You've shaped who he's become. Maybe. This is just about helping. About closeness. Nothing more. I told myself it was motherly affection. But it didn't feel like that anymore. Not completely. And that's when the guilt started to creep in. Slowly, quietly, like a shadow that followed me through the house. I'd catch myself watching him from the kitchen doorway. The way his back curved as he leaned over the table, writing. The way he ruffled his hair when he was frustrated. The way he smiled, open, honest, like the world hadn't closed him up yet. And I'd feel it, this pull. Not just physical. No, it was deeper than that. It was the need to be needed. The ache of feeling invisible for too long and suddenly being seen. He made me feel like a woman again, not just a wife, or a stepmother, or the person who kept the house running while her husband drifted further and further away. But every time I felt that flutter in my chest, it was followed by a sharp sting of shame. Because what kind of woman looks at her stepson and feels that? What kind of woman starts to confuse comfort with desire? I told myself it would pass. That I was just going through something, a phase. That all I needed was some time, some space. But the truth was, I didn't want space. I wanted the warmth I felt in his presence. The quiet excitement that came with every shared glance, every unspoken word. The sense that I mattered to someone. That I was wanted again. And that made everything so much more dangerous. Because I wasn't just fighting what I felt for him. I was fighting what I hadn't felt in years. And the more I tried to push it down, the more it clawed its way back up. After that night in the kitchen, it became harder to pretend nothing had changed. At first, it was subtle. Little things. We started spending more time together again. Movies in the living room became our thing, just like before. But now, it felt different. Charged. He'd sit a little closer. Our knees would brush sometimes, and neither of us would move away. His arm would rest on the back of the couch, and though it didn't touch me, I felt it. Like the space between us was vibrating. And I let it happen. I told myself it was harmless. That I was imagining things. But the truth was, I didn't want it to stop. Those nights felt like something out of a dream I didn't want to wake up from. Soft laughter. Dim lights. The kind of quiet intimacy you only get when two people see each other, and no one else is watching. One night, he leaned over to grab the remote, and his hand brushed my thigh. He froze. I did too. And in that stillness, in that brief silence, something passed between us that was louder than any words. He pulled his hand back quickly. Apologized. But I just smiled, said it was okay. I shouldn't have. But I did. It was like we were dancing around a fire we had no business getting close to. But neither of us stepped back. Our conversations changed too. He started asking deeper questions. About love. About relationships. About what it meant to be with someone, not just physically, but really be with someone. And God help me, I answered. Because it felt good to be wanted for my mind again. For my experience. For me. Then came the moment I'll never forget. We were sitting in the living room, the glow of the screen lighting our faces. The movie had ended, but neither of us moved. We just sat there, in the stillness. And then, so quietly I almost missed it, he said, "Would you show me what women really like?" My heart stopped. I turned my head slowly, thinking maybe I misunderstood. But his face. It was soft. Honest. Vulnerable. He wasn't being bold. He wasn't being crude. He was asking something from me, not just about bodies or sex, but about connection, understanding, trust. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just sat there, staring at him, everything in me screaming no and yes at the same time. My throat tightened. My pulse roared in my ears. And all I could think was, what I did next still keeps me awake at night. I don't know how long we sat like that. Minutes? Hours? Time felt suspended, like the world outside had disappeared. Eventually, I whispered, "This can't happen." But my voice didn't carry weight. Even I didn't believe it. Because a few nights later, I said yes. Not with words, not with a grand declaration, but with my actions, my silence, my presence. I told myself it would just be once. That I would educate him, like he asked. That I would take the mystery away so he wouldn't feel scared. That it was about helping him feel confident. That I was doing this for him. But that was a lie. And I knew it. Because deep down, I was doing it for me too. I wanted to feel wanted again. I wanted to feel powerful, needed, seen. And so I let it happen. A touch here. A look there. His fingers brushing mine. My hand resting on his knee a second too long. The way he looked at my lips when I spoke. The way I didn't look away. Each night, the space between us got smaller. Each moment, the line between right and wrong blurred until I couldn't tell the difference anymore. And then, it happened. One night, everything we'd been holding back crashed forward. It wasn't rough. It wasn't rushed. It was slow, emotional, confusing. He looked at me like I was the center of his world. And for a moment, I let myself believe I was. But the second it was over, everything changed. The air felt heavy. My skin felt too tight. The weight of what we'd done settled on my chest like a stone. He tried to speak. I shook my head. I couldn't bear to hear his voice. Because I didn't even know who I was anymore. This wasn't a romantic movie. This wasn't some secret fantasy come true. This was real. And it was wrong. But the worst part? I didn't regret it. And that terrified me more than anything else ever had. Because once you've crossed a line that should have never been touched, there's no way to go back to who you were before. It was raining that night. Not a storm, not dramatic. Just that quiet, steady kind of rain that taps against the windows and makes everything feel softer, sadder. The kind of night where the world feels still, like it's holding its breath. David had gone out of town for a work trip. He didn't kiss me goodbye. Didn't even say when he'd be back. I should have felt relief. But instead, I felt something else. A strange, heavy stillness in my chest. Like the ground underneath me had started to tilt. Josh stayed home that evening. Said he wasn't feeling well. We barely spoke during the day. Just passed each other quietly, like something unspoken was keeping our words locked inside. By evening, we both ended up in the living room. Not planned. Not coordinated. Just there. He was already sitting on the couch when I walked in. There was no movie playing this time. No tea, no snacks. Just the sound of rain and the low hum of silence. I sat down beside him closer than usual. And for a while, we just sat like that. No words. Just breathing. Then he looked at me. Not glanced. Not peeked. He looked into me. And I knew. I knew what was about to happen. And I didn't stop it. His hand found mine first. Warm. Gentle. Our fingers laced together like it had been waiting to happen all along. And then, slowly, like gravity was pulling us towards something we couldn't resist, he leaned in. I could have turned away. I could have stopped it. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I wasn't his mother. I wasn't even myself. I was just human. Starved. Reckless. And desperate to feel something that reminded me I was still alive. Our lips met, softly at first. Cautiously. But once that boundary was broken, there was no going back. Every layer of guilt, fear, shame, it disappeared in the heat of that moment. We moved like people trying to memorize each other. Hands tracing familiar skin in unfamiliar ways. Breathless. Silent. Almost reverent. It wasn't wild or fast. It was slow. Tender. Painfully intimate. And when it was over, we didn't speak. We just sat there. Still connected. Still breathing the same air. My eyes stared at the floor. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't even look at myself. And then he whispered it. The words that made everything shatter in slow motion. I love you. So simple. So innocent. But laced with a truth I wasn't ready to face. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I felt everything crumble inside me. My identity. My marriage. My sense of right and wrong. It all cracked. Quietly, like thin glass under pressure. He said it again, softer this time. I love you. And I just sat there, frozen. My heart screaming, my mind racing, my soul caving in. Because how do you respond when you've crossed a line so deep, so irreversible, that even breathing feels like a betrayal? I wanted to tell him it was wrong. That it couldn't happen again. That we made a mistake. But none of those words came. Only silence. And somehow, that silence said more than any confession ever could. The next morning, the house felt off. Not broken, not loud, just wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Like even the walls knew something had happened that couldn't be undone. I woke before the sun. Couldn't sleep. Didn't want to. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to gather pieces of myself I wasn't sure I even recognized anymore. Everything from the night before played in my mind in slow motion. His touch. His voice. The way he whispered, I love you, like it was something we were supposed to carry into the morning. But daylight doesn't lie. And when I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I didn't see a woman in love. I saw someone else. Someone I barely recognized. Ashamed. Sick. Afraid. I heard him downstairs, Josh. He was making coffee, humming to himself like everything was normal. Normal. I almost laughed. How could he act so calm, so steady, when I felt like I was crumbling from the inside out? I stayed in my room longer than usual. Waited until I heard him go outside before I crept down the stairs, every step feeling heavier than the last. He'd left a cup of coffee for me on the counter, just like he always used to. It should have been sweet, thoughtful, but instead, it made my stomach twist. Because it wasn't just coffee anymore. It was a quiet reminder of everything we didn't say. I barely touched it. All day, I avoided him. I moved from room to room like a ghost, pretending to be busy, pretending to exist. And every time I caught a glimpse of him, walking past the hallway, sitting on the porch, texting on the couch, he looked fine. Happy even. Like a weight had been lifted from him. He'd glance at me occasionally, and I'd look away, afraid of what I might see in his eyes, afraid of what he might still see in mine. But he didn't seem shaken. Not like me. He smiled when we crossed paths, asked how I slept, laughed at something on his phone, and even tried to share it with me like nothing had happened. It was almost too normal. Too okay. And that scared me more than anything, because it meant he didn't understand the gravity of what we'd done. Or maybe he did, and just didn't care. By evening, I was exhausted from pretending.